Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Judge Channel. I'm Dave Eldon. With me is Dalton.
Hello, everyone.
Grimes. What have we got to talk about to everybody right now?
So today is something that I really enjoy, and that is classes of information.
Oh man, no meta jokes where we like say, well, I don't have to tell you that, or
Well, I'm not bluffing. If that's what you're asking.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, we do have to tell you this. This is free information, folks. We're going to be talking about classes of information today on our broadcast, and this is a great topic. This is something it's important for everybody to be on the same page about, and this is hopefully what we're going to be doing. It's never CPV, except in the cases that we're going to talk about tonight, which some of which will definitely be a CPV.
Few and far between. That's backwards. And I feel like also with the classes of information can also be a little bit harder with Magic Online, because that does it for you. And so if a lot of your gameplay happens on Magic Online, this may just kind of be, taken for granted. And so some of the things that you're going to learn tonight might not apply there, but they make a big difference in paper Magic. And that's going to be most of the tournaments that you might see us at.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always like to tell people. If you're familiar with Magic Online and you're trying to learn how the rules work, I always recommend to people, well, how would it work on Moto, right? And that's generally a really great kind of a tool that you can use to suss stuff out, especially with our last broadcast, casting a spell. How would it work on Moto would be a great way to intuit how casting a spell works. But classes of information doesn't really work as well. Moto kind of does most of that for you, even the stuff that you would have to do yourself in a real life game of Magic. And so as a result of that, it's going to be more important for paper players, but it's also an important thing for judges to know how it works too. So what are the classes of information? That's the first thing.
English.
Okay.
History.
And
science.
Now, I was an engineering a major, so really
science.
Only one of those really pertains to me. But yeah, I mean, other people, I guess, have different specialties. But so what are the ones in Magic that we use?
Rabbits out of hats, card tricks, and the sawing people in half.
Right. So this is exactly why it's important to have this spelled out so precisely in the rules, because especially in a game like Magic, where there's a lot of hidden information and a lot of potential for bluffing, and especially Magic because there's also some virtual objects, some things that you have to acknowledge, but they aren't really visible things, such as triggered abilities. Or what you're doing as you're casting a spell. So in a game like that, there is definitely some potential for bluffing. But there also has to be some stuff that you can't bluff about, because otherwise it would take way too long to get anything accomplished, right?
And you'd kind of just be a jerk.
Yeah.
Hey, David, what's your life total?
Yeah. If anybody's ever watched Yu-Gi-Oh, like the animated series Yu-Gi-Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because every time they had on that show, it was like a running gag almost, where they would like play some card, and then the opponent would be like, well, what does this card do? And then you wouldn't have to say what your own card did until it was too late.
Until you tacked into it and lost.
So it was kind of funny, but Magic doesn't like it's not that funny. So we definitely have some rules about stuff that you are entitled to without contamination or omission, and stuff that you have to figure out for yourself. And that's what the class of information is really all about. Is we have some agreed upon standards of what kind of information you have to be completely honest about, and what kind of information it's okay to bluff about, and what kind of information you do and don't have to answer questions about. So that's what we're going to be talking about is what types of information fall into these categories, and what the reasoning is behind putting information in all of those categories.
All right, so should I give him the real answers?
Okay, let's go for it.
All right, so in Magic, there are 3 classes of information.
That's right.
They are free, derived, and hidden.
Okay.
A lot of people might say that revealed information is one, and that's kind of one of those gray areas, because a lot of cards do say reveal. But that is just considered, part of one or the other. There's no revealed category in and of itself.
Yeah, and we'll go through some examples, some concrete examples to help you all understand exactly what it is we're talking about when we say each of those types of things. So let's first make reference to where people who are interested in this sort of thing can follow along. So if you are interested in learning about the classes of information, you can see it on the Magic Tournament Rules, the MTR, and it's under section 4.1, Player Communication. And this is where it talks about what free, derived, and private information is, and there's a checklist of things that count as free information, and there's a checklist of things that count as derived information, and private information is everything else.
Yes, so that is my bad. Private is the official term for hidden. And I feel like you do run into that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Some people say it's free, some people say it's public. For the most part, you can figure out and derive what the other person means. But at other times, it is very important to have those distinctions of what the 3 actually are as per the rules.
Okay.
So
do we want to talk about what the different classes of information are? Like what
I think that sounds good to me.
Are? Okay.
Yeah. Let's start on my favorite kind of things, which are free things.
Yes. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a big fan of free things, and free information is no different. Mm-hmm. And so that is the first thing that we can talk about.
Awesome.
So what is the checklist of free information consisting of?
Oh boy. So this checklist seems like it's a lot of things to remember, but for the most part, it's kind of just the basics of the game.
Yeah, it's exactly like the casting a spell thing. A lot of the stuff that's on here, it really wouldn't work or it wouldn't make sense if it wasn't free. So that's kind of something that you can use mentally to help you to sort all of this stuff out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and start with the easy stuff.
Yeah.
So players' life totals are free information.
Yes.
So as per the rules, free information, and I will quote this, is information to which all players are entitled access without contamination or omission made by their opponents.
Yes.
So basically, you can't lie about it.
Yeah.
If your opponent asks for it, you must give it.
Right. And more than that, you can't misrepresent free information. So what that means is even if you don't verbally say that you have a wrong life total or a wrong, any sort of mistake or inaccuracy in free information, not only are you not allowed to lie about it, you also aren't allowed to mislead your opponent about it. So one example of that would be, for example, like let's say I have 4 lands in play, right? But I have 3 piles of lands, and one of the piles of lands is one land stacked directly on top of another land. So what I'm doing there is clearly an attempt to make it appear that I only have 3 lands in play when I actually have 4. And that is against the rules. You're not allowed to misrepresent the number of objects in a zone, which is what we're doing here. That is one of the types of free information.
Yep. This could also be, for example, if David and I are playing a game and on my score sheet I have him written down at 12 life. And I say, David, are you at 12? He goes, uh-huh. Or sure. If David knows he's actually at 10 or 9, it's his responsibility as a player to correct me on that.
Yeah. And in fact, that is a very, we call it opportunistic, very common method of opportunistic cheating would be if my opponent says, so yeah, are you at some life total? And I'm actually at some lower life total. I'll just go along with what my opponent said. This is the actual rule that someone is breaking, because remember, the definition of cheating is involves the player has to break a rule. So this is the actual rule that the player is breaking. What they're doing is they are incorrectly representing free information, and they're doing that to gain an advantage and in a way that they know is against the rules.
So to continue on with this checklist, and right along with life totals, is also the current game score of the match.
Yes.
Is free information.
Yes.
So if David and I are playing in a match and he wins the first game and I win the second, it is public information that we are 1-1.
Right. This is both of these, the life total and the game score of the current match. Hopefully it's obvious why those should be considered free information, because these are the sort of things that the game can't really function if players are allowed to bluff about these types of things. This is stuff that if there's someone who legitimately doesn't know one of those pieces of information, that's a situation that we need to resolve then and there before the game continues and before the match gets even further away from a point where the players agree.
So another example of free information is the current step, phase, or turn of the game.
Yeah, and that includes which player has priority or which players are active.
Yep.
So both of those, again, that's the sort of thing that let's say if I think that we're in one part of the game and you think that we're in a different part of the game, that's not really going to work. We aren't going to be able to have a game of Magic where I think we're in one spot and you think we're in another spot.
So that would be confusing.
Again, this is the sort of thing that we really need this to be free information in order for the game to work. Okay, so there's a couple of more free information categories that we need in order for the game to work. Before we progress on, I'd like to pause and ask if there's any questions in the chat. Anybody watching now have any comments or questions about anything that we've just said before we proceed to any of these other classes of information, which any of the other classes of information which we might have.
All right, so we do have Chunky Butta very active in that chat there. So thank you for your participation.
Yeah, no, don't worry. We are 100% going to make some more Yu-Gi-Oh references if that's what the chat is interested in, because we definitely. Okay, so we have a question in the chat: is Lantern of Insight considered free information? So I'm assuming that the thing that we're asking about here is the card on top of your library considered free information?
Why don't you go ahead and pull up Lantern of Insight, David?
Yeah, so if those of you watching along who might not be fans of the greatest deck in Modern,
and that's not just his opinion.
well,
those of you who follow
as of right now, this is the most popular
Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan.
Yeah, so this is the card Lantern of Insight here. And you can see both players have to play with the top card of their library revealed.
Each player.
Yeah, everybody
Ho-ho.
Equal opportunity revealer here. And so would the top card of your library be considered a free information in this case? What do you think?
Oh, you're asking me, man. Yeah. I thought you were gonna answer.
Well, do you want to bluff? Do you want to bluff an answer? And then everybody in the chat can decide whether Dalton's bluffing or not. That could be a nice kind of a game here.
Or you could bluff about what's on top of your library with the Lantern of Insight in play.
Well, it'd be difficult to do that because top card is revealed.
So each player plays with the top card of his or her library revealed.
Yeah.
So this is going to get something that we're into, or this is going to get into something that we will get into later. And that is hidden zones or private zones, such as your hand and your library.
Yeah.
The way Lantern of Insight reads is that each player plays with the top card of their library revealed.
Yes.
That card is still in your library.
Right.
And as such, it is in a hidden or private zone.
Yes.
And you're allowed to bluff.
So that is true, except that the name of any visible object is a piece of free information. And as long as the top card of your library is revealed, it is an object that's visible to both players. And so therefore you're not allowed to bluff about what the top card is. Now this could be...
you can't bluff about the name of the top card.
But, that's kind of true. Now this actually can come up because, maybe we have something like, you play a tournament in a foreign language. You've got Lantern of Insight that's a foreign card, and maybe you've never seen it before. Yeah, if you have a foreign Lantern of Insight on top, how are you supposed to ask for the Oracle text of it?
No, that's
right?
correct.
So if I don't have to give you the actual accurate useful name of the top card of my library, this is another thing that can cause the game state to not be able to function. And so that's the reason why the name of any visible object is.
Can you pull up Lantern of Insight for one more second?
Yeah, no problem.
Because I want to get Chad's opinion on this. Are those eyeballs on that lantern?
Yeah,
is that what I understand?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So you're seeing, that's the insight right there.
Yes, but where's the brain?
Yeah, well, the brain
What do they connect to?
So if you look on the inside here, it's really bright, and so
yes, it is.
That is the collected information that all of those eyes are relaying to the inside of the brain, which causes it to glow like that.
Ah.
So that's your official ruling from the flavoring judge here. That is how that works.
Perfect.
Okay, so that's how Lantern of Insight functions. And any other questions before we move on? Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about the lantern and how that interacts with some other cards in the future here. So okay, let's go back to our list here. We talked about the name of any visible object and details of the current game actions and past game actions that still affect the game state.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, that is kind of a lot. So we'll give you some concrete examples. So for example, if I play a Giant Growth,
sure,
or any targeted spell here.
I don't know. Giant Growth sounds great. That's classic.
Yeah, it's classic. It's been in a lot of core sets. Target creature gets +3/+3.
Is that the Explorers of Ixalan? Is
No,
that what that set is?
No, that is actually Explorers of Ixalan. Very well spotted.
Oh, well, thank you.
It was in the most recent one. So if I target something with Giant Growth, that is an example of a past game action that affects the current game state. The same would go for like a modal spell, for example. If I were to play a modal spell, I would have to say which mode that I was choosing. So that would be one. When I scry, and I have to, whether I put the card on the top or the bottom, that is something that my opponent is entitled to know whether I'm putting the card on the top of my library or on the bottom.
No sneaking it.
Yeah, you can't use your sleight of hand skills to obfuscate which option you chose there, because it is known to your opponent which one you did. So okay, that's another one. Now here's one. I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Do you know an example for this next one? And the next one that I'm going to talk about is the number and type of any counter, right? So the number of counter makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You can't like have a planeswalker that's at like 5 loyalty and represent that it's a 2 loyalty, right? That's obvious.
That would be ridiculous.
Okay. The type of any counter is kind of another interesting one, right? Because it doesn't seem necessary at first, right? So for example, there are ways that you can have different types of counters on an object, right?
That is true.
So you could have like a +1/+1 counter and a -1/-1 counter, and obviously if you have like a 3/3 that has like 2 counters on it, knowing whether those are +1/+1s or -1/-1s is important.
Fate counters.
Yeah. So you can't lie about that stuff. But there is one really that would also fall under details of past game actions that still affect the game state. But there is one really interesting card. And I'm wondering if you've ever seen it or heard of it before.
Me.
It probably that's
right,
very on
look until it comes on screen there.
It's very.
All right, what are we looking at?
When you said it scares you, I think that was a very apt.
Frankenstein's monster is brought into play if you do not
these wacky old
creatures
cards
from your graveyard. and remove them from the game, it is countered. For each creature removed from your graveyard in this way, you may choose to give Frankenstein's monster a permanent +2/+0, +1/+1, or +0/+2.
Yeah, so this card actually, when he enters the battlefield, you get to exile any number of cards, creature cards, any number of creature cards out of your graveyard, and for each one you exile, you get to put a counter, a counter on Frankenstein's monster, and you notice that there's 3 different types, right?
Yes.
So if it wasn't known, or if you didn't have to say what type of counters they were, there would really be no way to know what Frankenstein's monster was, whether it was a 2/3 or a 5/1 or a
5.
yeah 0/6 actually.
Goodness.
Yeah, so like look at this. So the rules team has got our back. Right?
Thank goodness
The
Frankenstein's
rules and the
monster.
policy people are working hard to make stuff like Frankenstein's monster function in real life games of Magic.
What has that card been eroded to? A zombie?
Yeah, a zombie, not a monster anymore. Unlucky.
Rats.
Unlucky.
I feel like horror could be fitting.
Horror
for that
could
one.
be fitting. That's a very, very real.
All right,
So
back to the meat and potatoes.
we're
here.
running out. We're running out of things. We actually okay. The contents of each player's mana pool. That's like kind of obvious. Okay.
And though important,
No,
I mean,
it
does come up.
This is another important one because cards that let you like tap for any color of mana, you have to say what color of mana you're tapping it
Sure.
for. So you have like a City of Brass or something that like taps for any color. You have to say also, you would have to say like there's some lands that can tap for multi mana.
Hey, why don't you pop up my Modern All-Star Unclaimed Territory? All right, so many of you know this card. 5-color humans runs it.
Yeah.
Lots of tribal synergy in standard at the moment.
Gosh, that humans deck.
So Unclaimed Territory allows you to tap for a colorless, or you can tap it for a mana of any color to spend on the chosen creature type.
Yeah.
So if I know that this Unclaimed Territory was tapped for red and
Yes.
is used to play something I haven't chosen, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's important that whoever owns this or whoever controls this is using the correct amount of mana there.
Yes.
So that's a situation where it can come up.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to explicitly say this,
No.
but you're not allowed to lie about it either. Okay. So if as long as you are not representing it incorrectly, or doing something to that would lead your opponent to believe that you tapped it for colorless when you actually tapped it for red, that's okay. You just are not allowed to make those types of bluffs or misrepresentations in the information. Okay, so that's one.
Is that all of our free information?
Ooh, there's one more.
Okay.
There's one more, and I actually was really looking forward to talking about this one. And that is the state and current zone of any object or player. This one actually
Indiana.
changed. This one changed recently.
Okay.
And this was one of the MTR changes in the most recent revision. And do you know what it was that they changed about this one?
I do not.
Okay, so I'm going to give everybody a hint on the chat here.
All right, so as a reminder, the verbatim text reads, the state, whether it's tapped, attached to another permanent, oh, you took it away, face down, or etc., and current zone of any objects or players.
Yeah, and so here's a hint. This is a hint for why they might have changed it. And they actually changed it by adding 2 words or player. So yeah, the
Current zone of a player.
yeah, so the current zone of a player doesn't really make a lot of sense, but the state of a player sure does when you've got cards like Vona's Hunger and the other Ascend cards running around. So
Very true.
whether I have the City's Blessing or not is free information, so I'm not allowed to lie about that.
Correct. I remember at GP Indy, where both of us were at, over the announcements, the head judge kept reminding players that the City's Blessing is not a triggered ability. It's not a static ability. It's not something you can lie about. It is a state of player.
Yeah, now to be clear, the thing that gives it to you might be a triggered ability
That is true.
or a static ability. But I don't think there's actually any triggered abilities that give it to you. one in the chat if you think of an exception that we can bring up.
Or tell us what it is.
Yeah.
'Cause I think you're right. I don't believe there is trigger ability.
Yeah.
But either way, it's not something that can be bluffed about. If your opponent makes a mistake, say they accidentally swing with their, 3/3
Crappy
Duskmare
dinosaur
or
thing.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you take 3, well, actually, you're both in trouble because that's supposed to be a 5/5 if they have Ascend.
Yep. So, okay, that is all of the free information. So anything that we did not talk about, and so we'll go through one more time just to be comprehensive and have it all in one place for you. The details of the current game actions and past game actions that still affect the game state, the name of any visible object, the number and type of any kind of counters, the state, which would be like tapped or untapped, attached to a permanent, face up or face down, and current zone of any object or player, player life totals and the game score of the current match, the contents of each player's mana pool, and the current step and or phase in which player is active. So those are all of the different types of free information at competitive rel. We'll talk a little bit more about regular rel later on, but that is free information. Are there any questions in the chat about anything that you would like to talk about with free information? We'll give everybody a few seconds while we get the next thing pulled up. And let me tell you something. We're not just going to tell everybody all the answers this time. Because we don't have to anymore. Now it's going to be derived.
You do the work.
It's going to be derived
I
information.
am no longer this guinea pig.
Yeah.
And that is a great feeling.
Oh gosh, come on.
Ooh, I do see the card telepathy there in chat.
Yeah, telepathy makes both players play with their hands revealed. Exciting card. Also really exciting because it has Chinese character. One Chinese character on it. But the rest of it, it's the Z character. It's the one over to the right of the person on the art. Yeah, you can't see the mouse.
Is it the one that kind of looks like a 7?
Yeah, it looks like the 7 with the cross in it. That's the Z character in Mandarin. And
your opponents play with their hands revealed.
Yeah, so again, this functions exactly the same way as Lantern of Insight. What this does is it fixes it so that cards that your opponent would ordinarily not have to tell you about, now they have to tell you the name of. Yep. And from the name you can get the Oracle text.
So they still remain in that private zone, correct?
Yes.
However,
yes.
The name of those objects does become free information.
Yeah.
Now the text.
Yeah, the text of those cards is a little bit different, and we'll talk about that in more detail
It's
when we talk
a great
about.
segue.
Oh goodness, yes. Yeah. So derived information, we'll use the quote system again to get this 100% right. Information to which all players are entitled to access, but opponents are not obliged to assist in determining, and it may require some kind of skill or calculation to determine. Derived information again has a checklist, but there are much fewer types of things that are derived information. There's only 3. Okay. So who wants to go first? Do you want to rock paper scissors for it?
All right, 1 in the chat if I should do rock. 2. No.
Take that.
Fine.
All right, so I get to do 2 now because I won that.
Oh wait, that's how it works?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is like one of those dredge matchups where like both players actually want to be on the
the draw.
One of the persons be on the draw.
Oof.
So the number and kind of objects present in any game zone that is not defined as free information, right? So the number of any kind of objects present in any game zone that are not defined as free information. So we had a question in the chat earlier, is the number of cards in the library free information? The answer to that is no. Because of this thing right here, it is actually derived information. So this isn't a quantity that could require some skill or calculation to determine. So you would, in this case, that would involve counting the cards. Now,
yes. With
that being said, another example that comes up all the time in Magic is cards in hand, right? So cards in hand falls under the same rule. This is also the number of any kind of objects present in a game zone that's not defined as free information. So if I ask you how many cards do you have in your hand? Yeah, you don't have to answer. That is a question you actually do not have to answer. You have to let the opponent figure it out. You can't do the like what game is it? The one where you're allowed to do that. BS? No, it's
BS.
So it's not like in BS where you can like put your hand down and be like, yeah, this is 4 cards in hand.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
we're gonna make this sub format of Magic.
Oh gosh, please no.
Where everything
like
is
no
derived.
banned list modern.
No, not no ban list. Everything is derived information.
Yeah, that'd basically be about as dumb of a format as So
if you wanted David Eldon's opinion on no ban list modern,
that was it.
There it is.
It's dumb. It's dumb. So okay, the number of cards in hand you actually do not have to answer truthfully, but you're also not allowed to lie about it. So you can decline to answer it.
Seems like an interesting gray area there.
Yeah, well,
you can't lie.
Yeah,
but you don't have to tell the truth.
Yeah. So the space in between those you don't answer. Oh no, you don't answer. It's like to plead the fifth, and that's exactly how the Fifth Amendment came to be. Actually, is because
from playing Magic the Gathering.
Well, no, it's because back in ye olde days, the laws in the court of England didn't give you the option to plead the fifth, and so if you were accused of something, you had to either admit that you were guilty and face the punishment, which was often quite severe, or you could alternatively lie about it, and then the punishment for that was also quite severe. So this pleading the fifth option is something that is available to you in cases of derived information. For
Except
free information,
pleading the fourth in Magic.
The fourth.
I believe this is section 4.
The 4.1.
4.1.
Yeah.
4.1st.
So with free information, if your opponent asks it to you, you have to tell them, and you have to tell them the right answer. And so in derived information, you don't have to tell them the right answer, but you also can't lie about it, which means that you're enabled to just not answer the question. So one thing that I want to get clear is that the number of any kind of objects present, let's say that I ask you, hey Dalton, do you have any blue cards in your hand?
Go fish.
Okay, so you say, no, Dave, I do not have any blue cards in my hand. And so then I go on my merry way and I play a spell. And
sounds like something you do.
Yeah, I mean, like that's, I as we learned last week, I love playing spells. But then you play a Force of Will on it.
Yeah, you bet I do. And you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna exile
Judge. He had a blue card in his hand and he lied about it.
Exile my. Oh, what do I want to exile?
Let's read one more time exactly what it says. The number of any kind of objects present in any game zone that are not defined as free information. Sure. So, did you just commit a CPV here because you deliberately misrepresented the number of blue cards that was in your hand?
No.
Okay, but is blue cards not a kind of object?
Well,
and that's the answer to that is no.
It's not.
Right. So
it's a kind, but not in the Magic sense.
Yeah. So kind of objects would be cards for your hand, or permanents on the battlefield, or cards in the exile. Those are what we mean when we say kind of object. We're not talking about specific types of the objects that are in those zones.
Think back to elementary school mathematics when you had to put units at the end of all your answers.
Yeah, that's actually...
These are the units.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is allowed. It is allowed for him to lie, and that is not what we mean when we say the number of any kind of objects in any game zone.
Yeah, and if you call a judge on me, the judge is pretty much going to politely say,
and laugh
get wrecked.
And laugh at you. So,
all right, my turn.
Yeah, your turn. What's your one that you would like to share with us?
This is actually probably my favorite piece of derived information.
Is it?
And I'm going to quote this.
Okay.
You are entitled to game rules, tournament policy, oracle content, and any other official information pertaining to the current tournament. So this could include like the infraction procedure guideline, the comprehensive rules, the Magic tournament rules.
How much prize support you get if you're in the top 8?
Correct. Yes. that pertain to the current tournament.
Official information pertaining to the current tournament.
Yes. Sorry, I couldn't tell if that was a question.
And yeah,
or
that is a
statement.
very relevant thing, because you are not allowed to, for example, say, hey man,
Hey,
if we draw, we're both going to get in the top 8, and that means both of us are going to get $5 million
if we draw
and get in the top 8, because that's what the prizes are for the top 8. That is against
David,
the rules.
that's an exciting offer, but I'm gonna have to call a judge.
Yeah, well, that is completely legal if you are saying a true statement. If the top 8 actually did give you $5 million guaranteed, then there would be absolutely nothing wrong with that statement. That is not bribery. That is just stating a fact.
Hey, David,
that is not an offer.
If we draw, we're in the top 8.
Yes.
On a separate note,
yes,
everyone in the top 8 gets $5 million.
Yeah. So
is that fair?
It would be fair if everyone actually was getting $5 So far,
We're not lying.
So far, I don't believe that there are any tournaments offering that generous of a prize pool. But
if you find any,
yeah, let us know.
Please let us know.
Because I bet the judge comp is probably pretty good for those tournaments too.
You wouldn't just want to try to win $5 million?
No, man, my EV is so low.
All right. So this is actually a very important one, and that is that players are entitled to pretty much the information required to play in the event. So let's say that, David does have his Russian Lantern of Insight, and I have no idea what the card is. Well, David has to truthfully tell me that is a Lantern of Insight.
Yeah.
That is free information, the name of that card.
Yes.
However, the text of Lantern of Insight, its activated abilities, and what it does to the game state, or sorry, not what it does to the game state. That is also free information as it pertains to what is currently happening. But the activated ability, that is not considered to be free information.
Yes.
The activated ability, which is, I believe, what?
Tap, sacrifice.
Tap, sack it, and target player shuffles their library?
Yep.
Okay. That is not free information. That is considered to be derived. So, if he's playing with that Russian version that I've never seen, I am perfectly allowed to call a judge, and any judge, I know I'd be happy to do this.
Yeah.
I love giving Oracle text.
Yep.
Would be happy to provide you with that. So, if you ever don't know what a card does,
call a judge.
Call a judge.
We're here to help.
Especially, I'd say more so importantly in, say, Legacy.
Yeah, any old
where
format
cards begin to become eroded or changed.
Any old format. Now, speaking of where cards become eroded or changed, there's actually one really interesting sentence that you did not read when you were quoting this.
Did I not?
Yeah. So cards are considered to have their Oracle text printed on them. Now, why is that? Do you know?
Because hopefully it's true.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So if I have a card out, let's pick a good one. Chains of Mephistopheles.
No way, man.
What?
Here's a good one.
Fine. Castle.
This is the one we're using.
That's the one we're going to use. Untapped creatures you control get +0/+2.
Yeah, that's right.
That physically printed on the card may not be what is written.
Yeah.
However,
this is what it actually does. So if you look in the Oracle, this is what the Oracle text of that card is. Untapped creatures you control, you get +0/+2. But I'm a baller, okay? Right? I have my limited edition Beta Castle.
Ooh, very nice.
You might notice something interesting on this printing of Castle that you didn't notice on another.
Attacking creatures lose this bonus.
Right. So this card here
runs into some funny shenanigans.
Has been errated
with vigilance.
Yeah. So if I have vigilance creatures, they still get the bonus.
Yes.
Even though this says that they don't.
Because it has been eroded.
Yeah.
It has been changed to more so accommodate the times of Magic.
Well, it's because the most recent printing has that, and that's what they go based on.
Yep.
When
so
putting them in.
If David and I are playing and he has this castle,
this
the physical
castle
card says your untapped creatures gain +0/+2. Attacking creatures lose this bonus.
Yeah.
However, the derived information that I can get from this castle says untapped creatures you control get +0/+2.
Yeah. So what the consequence of that sentence that we just read is cards are considered to have their Oracle text printed on them is if I have this castle out, and Dalton's like, hey, what does that card do? I can just show it to him. Oh yeah, here it is. This is what it does.
Oh, attacking creatures lose this bonus. Great, cool.
Yeah. So then I attack with my vigilance guy, and he makes a bad block. And then I call a judge and ask for the oracle text, and the judge gives us the oracle text of this card. And now it does get the bonus, even though it didn't look like it would get the bonus. So
does David commit cheating?
That is 100% legit.
No, it doesn't.
What I just did is 100% legit, and it's because of that sentence right there, where the cards are considered to have their oracle text printed on them. And so that is kind of an interesting situation, and that's the reason why that text is in the MTR.
If I'm not mistaken, in Magic Online they update cards to say their oracle text, correct?
Yeah. In Magic Online, the text that's appears on the cards is the oracle text, and then if you hover over the oracle text is on that. So and I believe you can also get the oracle text if you like exclamation point. Is that what it is for in the chat?
I think so.
Yeah. So
but yeah, so like we said, a lot of this stuff is going to pertain a lot more so to paper Magic than it will to Magic Online, but it's still some really cool stuff to know.
Yeah, and so it's especially important to know if you're in a real Magic tournament, and so this is one of those ones where if you don't know what the card does, you probably want to call a judge. And fortunately, Castle I think is like the biggest offender for stuff like this, where the oracle text is just like completely materially different from what's printed on there. The old artifacts is another good one. So for example, if we take Howling Mine.
Oh yes,
right.
I can think of a few too.
So here's our old friend Howling Mine with its current oracle wording. At the beginning of each player's draw step, if Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws an additional card. But my OG Beta Howling Mine just says that each player draws one extra card during their draw phase. And it doesn't say anything at all about being tapped or untapped. And that's because back in the oldie days, they had this...
The old Magic.
There was this rule where artifacts lost their abilities when they were tapped. So they didn't need to put... they didn't need to put that text on there because it was a continuous artifact.
It was a rule.
Right? Like, that's how the rules work. So they eventually got rid of that, but they decided to give Howling Mine and some other cards that fit the same kind of template.
Oh no, go back. That's a beautiful art for Howling Mine.
Yeah,
right
Mark
there.
Poole. Yeah, with the like the eyes. I guarantee that Word of Command, the artwork for Word of Command, they just like crop the center part out. Right, one in the chat. If that is exactly what happened,
you may
guys.
Look
I mean,
at
like, come on.
hand.
Don't try and read it. Don't try and read it. Yeah, but like, come on. It's two different artists too, which like shocks me. Like, come on. Okay, so that's...
Wait, go back to the other one.
What, the word?
Yeah. What is that? Jesper Mirrors?
Jesper Mirrors.
Jesper's Mirrors? If you are watching this, we're not accusing you of anything.
No, I'm sure that there were some other really fun cards that he illustrated. So okay, that is the second of the three different types of derived information. There's one more. And ooh boy, it's a goodie.
Oh man.
All the characteristics of objects in public zones that are not defined as free information. Okay, so what does this mean? So characteristics of an object would be stuff like its power toughness, or its mana cost, or what color it is, or it's not state. So state would be things like tapped or untapped, whether it's face up or face down, the being attached to a permanent if it's like an equipment or something. Those are the state. So characteristics would be stuff that you would get from stuff that's printed on the card. If you think about like a copy effect, it's basically the stuff that copying a permanent copies. That's like the short version of it. There's a thing in the CR, it's in section 109, where it talks about there's a list of all the stuff that counts as a characteristic. I'm not going to bore everybody by trying to pull that up and get the actual list out, but that's what it is. So back before when we were talking about like a force of will, how many blue cards do you have in your hand is a question that asks for the characteristics of objects in private zones, but all the characteristics of objects in public zones that are not defined as free information are derived information. So for example, I can ask Dalton, how many blue cards do you have in hand? And he doesn't have to answer that truthfully because that is not derived information. But if I ask him like how many black permanents he controls, so this is a card that we used to have. This is back when I started playing Magic. This is one of the first decks that I played. So if I ask him how many black permanents can control, you can't lie about that.
Correct.
And that is because that is a question that concerns the quote characteristics of objects in a public zone. And so in this case, asking how many black permanents you control, being black, the color black is a characteristic, and on the battlefield is a public zone, unlike in the hand. So that's what the difference is between the case that I brought up with Force of Will and this one here with the Spectral Force, is because we're talking about a public zone now instead of a private zone, the information is considered derived information. So that is the 3 types.
Let me hit you with one right quick.
Ooh.
All right. So, and I personally don't remember which one this falls into. So,
okay.
chat, hopefully this
One
helps you out. Exerted. Is that considered a state?
Exerted. Okay.
Or is that considered a characteristic?
So what exerted would be would actually be free information, and that is because that is a detail of the current game action and past game action that still affects the game state. So because you exerted it previously, it affects the game state because it now will not untap during the next untap step.
Awesome.
So which permanent you control or exerted is indeed free information.
So if you are exerting that Glorybringer, you better not lie about it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, realistically, when someone exerts their Glorybringer, they're usually exerting it by, pointing at a creature that's on the battlefield. So you're going to know if they exerted it, but you can't, like, even if I forget whether you exerted it and you aren't using, like, one of those, like, token things to mark it, you still have to tell the truth about whether you exerted it. You can't say, well, I don't have to tell you that anymore. Ha ha ha.
Well, you do.
Yeah, you still do because it affects the game state.
Awesome. So that will bring us, or should we hit our third note or should we hit regular?
A third note.
Our third category.
Yeah. So let's close the thing out. This one, the last one, doesn't really have any like special stuff. Private information is information that isn't derived or free.
Everything else.
Yeah, it's everything else. So the MTR tells us that this is information that players can only access if they are able to determine it from the current visual game state or their own record of previous game actions. So, for example, some stuff to unpack about this statement is the current visual game state. Right now, what that includes, it's going to be different for each player, obviously, because the cards that I have in my hand are part of the things that I can see. So those are visible game state for me, but they're not for him. So that would be an example of private information. What cards are in my hand? Okay, obviously, right? Like that's kind of pretty much how it works in Magic. This stuff is in my library. Neither player can see. So that would be private information. I would, of course, be able to determine it based on which cards I have played and knowing what I started with, but it's not something that I can just look at.
And then I also appreciate the part about it's right at the end there, able to determine from the current visual game state or their own record of previous game actions.
So what would be an example of that?
This a lot of times in professional tournaments, you'll see players with a notepad that when they cast a spell such as Duress, they get to look at the opponent's hand. It's revealed.
Yeah.
Now, this information, most players, if they're good at what they do, they'll go ahead and write down what's in the hand.
Yeah.
Because it is revealed to them. It is free for them to see during the resolution of this spell.
Yeah. Now, if the opponent wants to be like a super sportsman, they can play face up, but they're not obligated to do that.
So, but however, as soon as I resolve this spell and David picks his hand back up, those cards are going back to private information. And if I say, "Hey, David, I wrote your hand down there, but was that a fatal push or a grasp of darkness?"
I don't have any removal spells at all in my hand.
And he can bluff 100% about it.
Yeah, that is private information.
I could have just seen his hand, and he tells me there are 6 Tarmogoyfs in it. That's fair.
All right, so we got a question in the chat. Is there a difference between duress and Gitaxian Probe? Gitaxian Probe actually does have a different wording from duress. So duress, if you look at the first sentence, target opponent reveals his or her hand. So Git Probe has you look at target player's hand. From derived or free information standpoint, there's no difference at all between these. Looking at their hand is also something that you would only be able to see if you wrote it down.
Now, let's say we're in a multiplayer game.
Oh, gosh.
So, is there a difference between look and reveal?
Well, the answer is yes. But when you look at their hand, only the person who controls Git Probe is going to be able to actually see that. Whereas if it's revealed to everybody.
So that's probably going to be your biggest difference there.
Yeah. On the other hand, nice segue here. If you are playing a multiplayer game, ordinarily that would mean that you are not playing at competitive rel.
I'd say so.
Which is significant for one very important reason, which is that at competitive rel there's derived information, but at regular rel there isn't.
Yes. So at regular REL, which is rules enforcement level for those who are unfamiliar, this is probably going to be your FNMs, maybe your modern event at your store if they're not that picky. Pre-release
what's game day called now?
Store championships.
Yeah, there you go.
At regular rules enforcement level, there is no such thing as derived information.
Yeah,
all derived information becomes free.
Yeah, and that's basically just a part of making it a more casual environment. And so now we don't have to worry about certain types of bluffing.
Correct. So that does change though. So if David and I are playing at our stores pre-release, and I say, David, how many cards do you have in hand?
Yeah.
He can't just go, this many.
Yeah.
He has to tell me.
I have to give him a real answer. And that I feel like that helps the environment a lot.
The philosophy there is that regular rules enforcement level events tend to be more about learning and education and having fun. Whereas competitive or professional events are going to be your
going like this
spike style events.
Is not fun. That's not trying to physically count how many cards is in their hand is not fun.
And so in order to foster that better community, that better sense of friendship, fun, and the betterment of our abilities as Magic players, we go ahead and cut out derived information and make it all free public information.
So that is one of the they have a list of things that these are the rules that govern player communication. So now let's talk about that. That's one of the things that you can use derived or free or private information. That's one of the things that we use those categories for. So players have to answer if a judge asks it. Everything is free information to a judge.
Yes.
Right. So you can't lie to a judge. Obviously, this is hopefully one of those things that makes so much sense because, again, the game wouldn't be able to function if judges had to if I'm going to bluff to the judge, guys. It's did you draw 2 cards when you played that divination? I'm gonna bluff about that. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I sure did, Judge. Right. So, obviously that's not going to work. Okay. So, but if the player doesn't want to say that to their opponent because they're not normally,
which is fair.
Yeah. If it's information that their opponent wouldn't have access to, then they should ask away from the table. If you're a judge, you should be proactively saying, "I want to talk to you away from the table." If you know you're going to be asking about stuff that the opponent wouldn't have access to normally, but players don't have to answer those questions at the match. They can request that they tell you the answer to those types of questions away from the table.
Yep.
So as we said before, it is not allowed for players to incorrectly represent derived or free information. So you cannot, not only can you not lie about them, you also cannot do stuff that is intended to mislead or obfuscate the actual answer to a question that would fall under those two categories.
Yep. So, like David mentioned earlier, this would be stacking lands on top of each other to make it appear that you only have so many.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of players, they'll put their lands side by side, and it's easy enough to count.
Yeah.
But we're saying, actually hiding it with the intention.
And yeah,
of,
if you have like a bunch of lands, it's okay to put them all in like 1 or 2 stacks, but it's not okay to, put your lands in 3 stacks of 1 and 1 stack of 2. That to me pretty clearly signifies an intent to deceive rather than an intent to like make things more convenient for you.
All right. So
and the final one, there's one more. You wanna read the last one?
Yes. So players must answer completely and honestly any specific questions pertaining to free information.
Right.
So this once more drives in that point that free information is just that. It is free for both players. And so you cannot lie, but you also must answer. You have no choice.
Yeah. So that is the classes of information in a nutshell. Now we have some exciting questions that we were going to ask about.
Yes, I love that.
Oh,
I
man.
love
Don't
questions.
you? So
Yes.
so
I previewed one last week.
why don't you go for it? Let's go for
All
it.
right.
Let's go for it.
So this is probably my favorite class of information scenario. David and I are playing. Pick a card, any card you want.
Jataxian Probe?
Sure, Jataxian Probe. Sounds great. So David has Jataxian Probe. I have Jataxian Probe.
Fine.
My card.
Fine.
I'm playing blue.
I didn't want Jataxian Probe anyway.
And I go ahead and cast one. Look at his hand, I draw my card. Things are great. So David thinks he's going to pull one off on me. He says, ha ha ha, surgical extraction, that Jataxian Probe. So why don't you go ahead and pull it up.
Yeah,
Surgical extraction reads along the lines of
This
choose
is
target
what it
card in the
says.
graveyard. It reads along the lines of this. Other than a basic land card, search its owner's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. Then that player shuffles his or her library. So David decides to cast this on my Jataxian Probe.
Yep.
Because value.
Sick value.
All right. So David grabs the one in my graveyard, and he starts flipping through my library. Sees 1, sees 2, and I say, David, I only run 3. You got them all.
All right.
So David says, okay, puts my library back, and we're good. I'll clarify, I have none in hand.
Yeah.
Next turn, off the top of my library, bam, Jataxian Probe, cast it.
Hey, Judge. He said that he was only playing 3, and so I got all 3 of his ones that he was playing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he played another one so he was really playing 4. So he lied to me about how many Jataxian Probes he was playing.
Yep.
Okay, so is this allowed? Is this legit? Is this a bluff, or is this a cheat? Or maybe not a cheat. Maybe he didn't realize that it was against the rules to bluff in this way.
How dare you accuse me?
Well, I gave you an out, man.
I am a neutral arbiter of the game of Magic.
Yeah. So okay, is this a legit bluff or not? That is the question. So in order to answer this correctly, what we're going to do is we're going to need to take a look at the things that we're allowed to lie about. So that would be derived information.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of information is how many get probes I'm playing?
So this is going to be the number of any kind of object present in any game zone that are not defined as free information.
Okay, so again, that would be the number of cards in my library. Right, so it's actually a combination of that and the characteristics of the objects in public zones. So because the library is not a public zone, the characteristics of the objects in the library are not derived information, even if you can actually see all the cards in the library because those cards are revealed due to, for example, surgical extraction.
So I think an important distinction there, surgical extraction does not state that you reveal your library.
Yeah. You
At
search
no
library.
point does this become
Yeah.
a revealed or public zone.
Yeah. The library is never a public zone, even if
Exactly.
all the cards in it are revealed. There's actually a rule in the CR that says that hidden zones still are hidden zones, even if all the cards in them happen to be revealed. And so because of that, this is a legitimate bluff that you can pull off. It's not particularly sporting, but at the same time, this is within the rules that we have agreed to for player communication. So this is a legal thing for you to do, even if it's maybe a little scummy, just teeny bit,
Just a little bit.
teeny bit.
But it is David's responsibility as a player to fully check that.
You got me.
And if he doesn't, well, too bad.
Yeah. So that's a thing that you're allowed to lie about.
All right, why don't you hit me with one? What are you thinking of for classes of information, David?
All right. So let's say I have a Tarmogoyf. Okay.
You got a voice.
And I attack you with the Tarmogoyf,
You do.
and you take 3. Okay.
No blockers?
Yeah.
All right, fine.
No blocks. No blocks. So Tarmogoyf,
You might have heard of it before.
once or twice. So this is Tarmogoyf. How many card types I have in my graveyard, though, is actually 4. So this is kind of a common situation where both players are mistaken about the number of cards in the library. So what happens when I take 3 damage? Or what happens when you take 3 damage?
I was like, you can take 3
Yeah,
damage.
yeah,
that's
I'll take the
fine.
damage. No blocks for my own creature.
All right. So, Tarmogoyf's power and toughness is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards.
Yeah.
These are cards in a public zone.
Yeah.
However, the Tarmogoyf, his text is a characteristic defining ability.
Yes.
As we mentioned, characteristics fall under derived information.
Yes.
So, which is this? Are we going to look at the card types in graveyards as public, as free information, or are we going to look at this as, a bluff? Is that something that you can say? Well, you said I'm taking 3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't sound right to me,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Can you go along with it? I mean, I'm a dumb Magic player.
I wish I could.
Yeah.
I'd prefer to take 3.
Gosh, that would be great. Okay, so why can you not go along with this?
So, although the characteristic of it is not considered free information,
Yes.
at the point where I receive damage, this becomes a detail of the current game action or past game actions that are affecting the game state.
Yeah.
I am taking damage. I am going to be losing life.
Yes.
So if he says that I'm going to be taking 3 when I'm actually taking 4, we run into a problem there.
Yeah. So my life total is going to fall by the appropriate amount per Tarmogoyf's actual power and toughness. And so again, the player's life totals are also an example of free information, which means that when I take the 3 damage, my real life total is going to be 4 lower, and so that means it's not legal to misrepresent what your life total is going to be after that damage transaction.
Correct. And as such, as a reminder, with derived information, you don't have to answer it honestly. You don't have to answer it truthfully, but you cannot lie about it.
Yes.
In which case, even though maybe David committed an accident and only thought that there were 3 in and didn't realize it till the damage step,
Yeah.
he did misrepresent that information.
Yeah, it is a mistake in providing the power of Tarmogoyf.
And then I would give my first ever CPV.
It's happened to me once before. A relatively interesting situation that I'm planning to write about from GP Indianapolis. You can follow my blog, Judging for the Win, to find out more about that situation.
Ooh. Looks like we have another question here in chat. Are you going to explain City's Blessing and how to account for it?
Right. So again, City's Blessing would be an example of the current state of a player, and that is something that you are not allowed to lie about because that's free information. So whether you have the City's Blessing or not is free information. You are not allowed to lie or misrepresent that in any way.
And as opponent, even as an opponent, if I know that David should have the city's blessing because he has 10 permanents and has ascended, I cannot go along with it as if he didn't have the city's blessing. So David's going to pull up this card again, Bonus Hunger. It says that each opponent sacrifices a creature. If David has the city's blessing, I instead sacrifice half of my creatures, rounded up. If David casts this and he has the city's blessing but doesn't announce it, if I only sacrifice one creature, I am committing an error.
Yeah. And obviously, I'm going to correct that error. Now, one interesting thing is that for cards like this specifically, this is an instant that gives you City's Blessing as it resolves if you have 10 permanents. Mm-hmm. But whether I'm going to get the City's Blessing when this resolves is not free information. That is an example of derived information, the number of permanents on the battlefield under my control. And so as a result of that, if he asks me, what does that do? I can say, oh, yeah, it makes you sack a creature. Mm-hmm. Now, that would be a legitimate bluff if I did not have the City's Blessing already. Because the effect of the spell right now, I don't have to give complete information, such as, for example, it's going to give me the City's Blessing, and then some other, less cool stuff is going to happen. I don't have to give the complete information. I just have to, show them the card.
And to be fair, I could lightning strike one of your creatures.
Yeah, for sure.
And you could lose that, or not lose, but you would not gain ascend, and as such, I would just sacrifice a creature.
Yep.
So that would be a 100% plausible scenario.
Yeah, that is a very realistic one. Do you need to point out the City's Blessing? If not, can you realize it but not say that you're no longer at 10 permanents? How do you prove that you had it without giving it away earlier? So if you have the City's Blessing, then you have it for the rest of the game. Mm-hmm. If you have an instant or sorcery card, they only give you the City's Blessing when they resolve. So you can play it and it would have 10, you would have enough stuff to get the City's Blessing. But if you lose some of your stuff in response to that spell, then you won't get it as the spell resolves.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that is checked upon the resolution, not upon the cast. So what is this one? Do you need to point out the City's Blessing? If not, can you realize that you have found it, but not say then, if you no longer have 10 permanents, how do you prove that you had it without giving it away? Well, that's a rough one. So as a judge, if you know that you should have had the City's Blessing earlier, that would have been your responsibility to announce it. If you realize it and don't state anything so that you can gain an advantage off of it later when you now announce that you do have it,
that would be
that sounds like cheating.
Yeah, it's misrepresenting your state, which is whether you have City's Blessing or not.
And that is misrepresenting your game state. That is misrepresenting the interaction of the cards. And as such, any judge is probably going to start looking at you for cheating, whether or not you realized this.
That's going to be a tough one. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a tough one to explain.
It's going to lead to a fun investigation, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
But otherwise, say, you're not trying to cheat. Say we figure that out and things are fine. And you realize that, yes, you should have had the City's Blessing earlier. A City's Blessing was not a triggered ability. It is a static ability among permanents and I don't even know what you call it on the instants and sorceries.
It's a spell ability.
Spell ability?
Yeah.
All right. So that is just something that it occurs in the game, and as such, it happens regardless of whether or not you acknowledge it. If you failed to acknowledge it and your opponent failed to acknowledge it, unfortunately, you both are going to end up with penalties for that. Game rule violations, failure to maintain game state, both are possibilities there. But looking back, it would just take so if you realize that you should have had it and your opponent agrees that yes, you should have had it, then you can fix that without a judge. You can say, all right, we both agree on this. I have the City's Blessing, good to go. If your opponent doesn't agree on that, then you would require a judge to start an investigation into that to figure out how relevant that is to the game state and whether or not you should have the City's Blessing. By relevant to the game state, I don't mean that the judge is just going to say, oh, boo-hoo, too bad. I'm going to say that whether or not you have the city's blessing, I'm like, I found this hole, and I'm like really trying hard to dig out of it with my words and such. The judge is going to figure out whether or not you were supposed to have it through an investigation. And if the judge deems that you do have it, and if you, you're going to be able to figure that out.
And that's part of your job as
Thank
a
you.
judge, is being able to figure stuff like that with an investigation. So the short version of that is, if you have the city's blessing from a spell, then you will. That is a part of the spell resolving, just like drawing a card is a part of the spell resolving, or sacrificing a permanent is part of the spell resolving. And if you don't do that part of the spell resolving, that's not following the card's instructions, which is something that is a game rule violation or some similar to that.
Yep.
So that is going to be all for our broadcast tonight. If you have some more questions, we will be available on our social media in order to answer those. And we encourage you to send those in. Any suggestions for future broadcasts, then please send those in also.
We would love to hear what it is you want to know about.
Yeah. I mean, I like talking about whatever. But
David and I are two individuals that know quite a bit. We've already discussed a few things that we have found as important, but we want to know what you would like to hear about. This could be, I don't know, specific card interactions. This could be banned and restricted. This could be tournament prep. Whatever you want to know about, we want to hear.
Yep, absolutely. So, but until then, go ahead and join us on our next broadcast. That's going to be 2 weeks in the future, which is going to be on
February 22nd?
Yeah,
I believe.
February 22nd.
Yes.
And so until that time, you can follow at Judging for the Win on Twitter to be notified of upcoming broadcasts, and check out our YouTube channel, Judging for the Win, to see our past broadcast libraries. Until then, everybody, this is Dave Eldon and Dalton Grimes signing off. Have a great evening, everyone.
Yep. Happy FNM.